What is going on, people? We are Tottenham TV and we are here at the Grosvenor Casino in Luton. And I have got a very special man with me. I have got the great Martin Yole back on the channel. It's so great to see you, Martin. Welcome back.
Oh, it's nice being here.
It really is good to see you. And I want to say, just before we start this interview, make your way to Grosvenor Casino, Luton, their sports betting lounge, an amazing place to watch football, table service and food and drinks on tap here for you guys. But great to see you back on the channel, Martin. How are you? Where are you living now? Are you following football a lot?
I come straight from Chickwell. Maybe you don't know, but I still live there.
Wow.
I bought a house 20 years ago when I started at Spurs.
That's
and
right.
I'm still there. I'm probably the only one who's still there where the Spurs lodge was, you know. Everybody moved to Anfield. And I still, I'm not living there. I live in Holland. But I've got a house in Chickwell. I've got a house in Bath. So sometimes we go to Bath because my daughter is studying there. She's doing art. And sometimes we go to Spain. I mean, I'm traveling a lot. So I'm here now for a week. So.
Great, and it's unbelievable to have you here. And you know, a lot of Spurs fans hold you very close to their heart, very still, even to this day. And I want to know about from you, how do you look back at your time at Spurs?
I think it was exciting times. You know, when I came there as a sort of chief coach, Frank Arnezen was there. Then they took Santini on their contract with his staff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't easy at the beginning. So Clive Allen, Chris Hughton and me were there as well as sort of assistants. And then, as you know as well, because Santini had a few problems, you know, to get used to the club and to the language.
Yeah.
And we took over and we never looked back. I think it was a great time. You know, we started with the game against Arsenal. It was maybe a bit disappointing because we conceded 5 goals.
Yeah.
We scored 4. I will never forget that game. It was nice. And then we played a cup game at Burnley. And the fans really took to us, you know. They were behind us and we beat Burnley 3-0. And after that, you know, we never looked back. I mean, we had good results. We blessed White Hart Lane because everybody said White Hart Lane was cursed by the gypsies and the Spurs Lodge was cursed. So I said to Daniel, we have to bless the ground and we have to bless the training ground. And that is what he did. And I think after that, everything went well until probably when there was another guy coming in for Frank Arnezen and we couldn't get along. And so everybody thinks that it was probably in my 4th season. But I think it started in the summer already because we had a terrific season. I think we had 2 defeats in the second half of the season. We had 65 points. We did well. We did well in the Europa League, in the FA Cup as well. But then there was talks of that they were negotiating with the Spanish manager. And of course he won the UEFA Cup. So everybody said, now he must be a very good option for the clubs. But for me it was not easy, you know, because they were talking about it all the time. And so in October, Daniel said to me, let's call it a day. So yeah, what could I do?
Yeah, you know, a lot of Spurs fans are still to this day very bitter about how you left the club and why you left the club. But you did bring the club back to European football, 5th in the league. You know, how do you look back at that time and what was the key to the success that you had at Tottenham?
I think the key was that you need good players and you need to give your players identity. And I think I probably did that with my staff.
Yeah.
And Chris Hughton was a big help for me, you know. So. We didn't have the players we've got now because we didn't have the money then.
Yeah.
I can remember that I was watching Aaron Lennon, for example, playing for Leeds. And I said to Daniel, yeah, he will be a terrific player. And I had to play him. And on the other side was Reto Ziegler. He was 18.
Yeah.
So it was different times then. But we still managed to have, I think, good results. Although we had a lot of injuries in my first season.
Yeah.
But we still ended up, maybe you don't, when I took over from Santini, we almost were in Europe on the final day of the season. I think we were 8th or 9th. But the season after that, you know, went well. And I think in my last season, in the 3rd season, I think we played in Europe as well, like Spurs do now, tonight against Eintracht.
Yeah.
And we had 10 games in the Europa League, and we won 8. We had 1 draw, and we had 1 defeat against Seville.
Yeah, I remember that very well. And I remember our first game back in Europe with you with Slavia Prague. You know, you remember that with, great games of football that I can remember being back in Europe. And, a lot of Spurs fans just look back at that moment in time being like, that was the first time in a while that they really saw Spurs go back on the right track.
Yeah, and for me it was good that the Spurs fans, they could identify with my team, because there was one game, I think was an England game, and we had 5 or 6 boys from my team in the England team, you know, Ledley King, Jermaine Jennings, Aaron Lennon, Jermaine Defoe. Don't forget Michael Carrick, because nobody's talking about it, but Michael was an unbelievable player. Yeah. And of course, Robbie Keane was, for me, was a legend. You know, he was such a great footballer and a great person as well. And Ledley King was playing in the England team, and the only thing with Ledley was that he was injured for 7 months, but we were still in the Champions League spot, I think, for 6 months as well. And then all this crap about Lasagna Gate, and Arsenal had 2 games in hand. We were 7 points above them. I remember. 3 games before the end. So that was a bit disappointing, So, but I really thought that I would stay there for years. But then in the summer with this Damien Comoli, it started, and there were rumors that he wanted another manager because he wanted to come in my dressing room all the time, and I kicked him out, So, but okay, I think that is a good structure, like with Frank Arnezen and me, because you need to be friends, and you get along, and then you can talk about everything. But if the situation is different and the structure is different, I think it's difficult. So I think a lot of clubs will go back to different recruitment, no technical director, and the manager is the one who's got a big influence on transfer politics.
Yeah. You mentioned those players before, right? Ledley King, Aaron Lennon, Robbie Keane. I don't know if you know, but they played a Legends game at the Tottenham Stadium a week or 2 ago. All of them played, and all of them still look fit as a fiddle, scoring goals. The quality that team had was unbelievable.
It was a Legends game, but the thing was 10 players of that game were playing for me as well. So
I know.
That was so nice to see. Chimbonda was there.
Chimbonda, yeah.
Of course, there was a lot of Michael Carrick, for example, wasn't there, and I saw Robbie Keane score, and Defoe still had the same
hat-trick. Robbie Keane scored.
Yeah, and Defoe had the same shot, because he was an unbelievable finisher as well. Berbatov dropped off at midfield because he thought let Robbie Keane do the business with Jermaine, and you saw his touch, because he had probably the best touch ever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Such a joy to behold watching that team. But looking at the club now, how do you think the club has changed since your time there?
I think the club did very well, because sometimes I can't believe all this talk about prices, and of course it's unbelievable. West Ham won the Conference League 2 years ago, but that doesn't mean anything. If you look at Spurs years ago, they were in the Champions League final, and you can't say it's a crap club because they didn't win it. No, and there's too much focus on winning a prize. I think Spurs played 6 finals over the last 25 years. A lot of semi-finals in the FA Cup, finals, quarter-finals. I think Spurs is a great club. The only thing which we lack is a prize, but that is not easy, and a lot of other teams will tell you that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And looking at the current Spurs team now, who's the one player in this current Spurs team that you would think, I'd love to manage him?
Yeah, I think Kulusevski, I think he's an amazing player, although he wasn't 50 or 60 million. Focus is always on spending money, but Aaron Lennon was 1 million, Michael Carrick was probably 2.5 million. So it's not about money, it's about good scouting, good recruitment, So, and I think sometimes there's a few obstacles there at Spurs, but I would... Van der Ven, I think, he's a great addition to the squad. Van der Ven was with my friend Mino Raiola a couple of years ago, and he went to Wolfsburg for 3 million, and then Spurs paid 40 million. And if they would have asked me a year before, I would have told Daniel, take Van der Ven for 3 million. So you've got the same with Bergval, for example. Bergval was 10 million.
Yeah.
But 6 months ago, he was 700,000, So that is scouting, And sometimes I feel that is probably lacking at Spurs. But Johnson is okay. He's a good player, but Aaron Lennon beat his man, and he got a cross in. And I think that is lacking a bit in some teams, You can only be a top club if you got good wing players.
Yeah, maybe we need you as sporting director now at the club. We're looking at the talent that you have.
I would advise them for free,
Yeah.
I don't need money, but I would like to help him. But I mean, Jan Vertongen, you don't know. I put Jan Vertongen in as a centre back with Toby Alderweireld. I put Dembele as a number 6 at Fulham.
Yeah.
And then Daniel phoned me, probably for the first time ever. He phoned me. He said, I will take your player. I will take Clint Dempsey and I will take Dembele.
Wow.
I said, no, I won't repeat what I said, but but he had a clause in his contract, Dembele, and Dembele was probably the most gifted player ever in midfield playing for Spurs.
You look at that player, Moussa Dembele, and how his ex-teammates talk about him.
Yeah,
Everyone says he's the best player that they've ever played with.
Yeah, I think he was the only one who could do the things with his right foot, but he did it with his left foot as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was an amazing player. But of course, I was in Hamburg and I was in Ajax. I had other very good players as well, but I mean, I certainly enjoyed Dembele. But can you imagine how I felt when he left? So I had 52 points in my first season at Fulham, and the second year, Clint Dempsey was gone, my top scorer, and Moussa was gone. So now probably you can imagine what I told Daniel.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can only imagine, probably not to be repeated here on here. But looking at the Spurs team now, under Ange Postecoglou, what do you make out of the current team?
I think in England, in the league, they're struggling, of course. And of course, there's a lot of injuries, and I think they are probably right as well. Because the intensity is so high that probably you get injuries. But the only thing is, I saw them play against Man City. I couldn't believe my eyes. They were beating Man City. A week before, they lost against Ipswich at home.
Yeah.
And then 10 days later, they beat Man City 4-0. And not all of them were playing, because I can remember Davis playing in the centre as a centre back.
A lot of injuries, yeah.
And Dragusin playing as a right centre back. So it's not about injuries all the time, So that is a bit disappointing that even when you got injuries, they can beat Man City. So there's not a reason to lose 16 or 17 games. But on the other hand, the first, I think, was 9, 10, 11 games of the season. I couldn't believe my eyes, They played proper football. And was almost overwhelming. So yeah. I don't know what happened there, but I only hope that they will beat Frankfurt tonight. Because if you take all the players pound for pound, man for man, I think there's maybe 3 players who could play in the Spurs team.
I agree, yeah.
Because Frankfurt is not the best team in Germany. I mean, Bayern Munich beat them 4-0, Leverkusen beat them 4-1.
Yeah.
But I saw them at Spurs in London. And I think they are a proper team, They're a good team. So I think it will be difficult. But if you remember the Hoffenheim game, I think for Spurs it was an easy game. I mean, they beat them on the counter-attack all the time. They had an unbelievable transition. So hopefully they can do that tonight.
Martin, absolute pleasure having you back on the channel. Thank you so much. And the great Martin Jol, everyone. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.